Okay, we're here. This is actually, I didn't even tell Andy this. This is the first show of, if you want to call it season 3 of Fun Football Podcasts. It's the first one in a few months. I took a summer break. Andy, I know you had a vacation, but I know you've been, I mean, I've listened to a few shows just in the last few days. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yep. Okay, so you are the host of Pack a Day. For the people, I'm sure a lot of them are listeners of Pack a Day as well. But can you fill everybody in about what Pack a Day is, where you can find it, and just about the show?
Yeah, 365-day a year Packers podcast dedicated to Packers all the time. We have a team of 20 some people that develop podcasts every single day. We've got about really it amounts to myself. I do an episode daily, and then we've got 7 different teams Monday through Sunday, and they bring a new podcast every single day. And so we've got the audio channel where you're getting my episode as well as everyone, the daily episode over there. And then you're getting the YouTube channel as well, which is a daily video. So yeah, lots of stuff going on in the Pack a Day world. But really, the idea is a 365-day a year dedicated Packers podcast where every single day you're going to get a new Packers content, no matter what's going on, whether it's draft, free agency, in season, preseason, training camp, any of it. We've got you all covered.
I love it. I did not realize you guys had that many teams, but the more I've listened to it, I'm like, I haven't heard this person before. I didn't realize you guys had. That is awesome. How long have you guys had that big of a team for? You said we just talked about it off the air. You've been on for almost 7 years.
Yeah.
How long have you had that big of a team?
Yeah, pretty much from the onset. So one of the crazy things is, my initial idea for it was basically following the New York Times, The Daily, which was and still is a once a day, 5 days a week show dedicated to basically one piece of news. And then they would say, like, here's what else you need to know today. And then so that was kind of my idea for it, is like, hey, let's do one topic a day, Monday through Friday. We'll have a daily show, and I'll do Monday, and like maybe Zach Jacobson will do Tuesday, Dusty Evely will do Wednesday. I wanted 5 people, 5 hosts, me being one of them. And that was sort of my, sort of whole idea for the show. So once I came up with the idea, once I put it out there that, who's interested in doing this, and I reached out to a couple of people, like I think Dusty and Zach at the time. I think there were a couple other ones I reached out to as well, but I ended up with, I think, over 200 people who applied to want to be part of the podcast. And to this day, I mean, the hardest thing that I've had to do in this entire journey was whittle that group of 200 some people down to what I thought was going to be like 5, but it ended up, I'm like, we have so many great people. We're going to, instead of going 5 days a week, we're going to go 7 days a week. And I'm going to put 7, we actually put I think 10 teams together to begin with. And like some of them were weekly, other ones were like bi-weekly. And we had some backups too, in case people couldn't do anything, some stuff like that. And then it eventually just became where we had 7 teams of basically 3 people a piece for the most part on each team. Some people have left, some people have gone. But one of the crazy things to this day is that, I thought, as soon as I put it together, I'm like, this is the dumbest thing ever, because I'm going to have people flake out at the last minute and they're not going to get me an episode, and I'm going to have to record at the last second. I'm like, this is going to be a nightmare. And now, because I do a daily episode every once in a while, there will be, especially in the off season, one of the teams might say like, hey, we weren't able to get you something today or something like that. But for the most part, there's never, I don't think to this day, been like an emergency where I've like had to record something at the last minute because somebody hasn't gotten something to me. And we've never missed a day on the audio podcast in now almost 7 years. So as amazing as they are as podcasters, they're better people, and just very, very lucky to get to work with the people that I get to work with.
Man, that's amazing that you've had almost 7 years. We counted the number. It's well over 2,300, and you haven't missed a day. That's amazing, and it's awesome content. If you're a Packer fan, you're getting deep dives. When I listened to your 1 through 90, I'd heard of all the players, but you were able to give me insights on the players that I hadn't heard. And the episode with Warren Sharp, I really appreciated, because it was cool to get it from. Because I'm a Packers fan, I try to remain as unbiased with the show as I can, but it can be difficult. So that's great, man. So you've lived in the area. We talked about off the air. You've lived in the area. You've been a Packers fan your whole life. You've done Pack a Day for almost 7 years.
Yep.
Under the umbrella of Cheesehead TV. Okay. This is kind of an easy question, so I'm going to try to make it a little bit more nuanced. But what is your expectations for the Packers this season overall? I know we're going into training camp, and I have some training camp questions for you. But what are you expecting? Like for me, I'm kind of in a weird spot where I'm expecting a wild card. I don't know if we're ready to make the jump to winning multiple playoff games and going on a deep run yet. Where are you at with the team right now?
Yeah, so it's fun. So I'm actually going to be out of town this weekend. So I recorded a few podcasts in advance while I'm going to be out of town. And the one that comes out tomorrow is how the Packers can win the Super Bowl. The one that comes out on Friday is admittedly a little bit less fun. It's what would happen or what would need to happen in order for the Packers to take a step back and not even make the playoffs this year. And then on Saturday's episode is going to be what are the realistic expectations for the Packers coming up this year? So I put out there 12 different things that I think are fair and realistic expectations for the Packers. Not saying that they couldn't do more than this, not saying that it couldn't be less than this, but what I think it's a really important exercise to go through and put down your expectations. Well, yours and everyone else's doesn't have to be the same as mine. Mine don't have to be the same as yours, etc. But what your expectations are, because everyone's immediate reaction anytime one thing goes wrong is, well, fire that person, cut that person, trade that person, get rid of them. We don't want. It's like, well, understand what if your expectations are that this is going to be an 11-6 team, well, don't be surprised when they've got 4 losses at some point this season, because you probably have 2 more if that's what your expectations were going into the year. So for me, just kind of giving you a couple of them, I said playoffs with at least 1 playoff win. To me, that's my expectation going into this year. I thought 2 years ago, they obviously were able to get that. They got into the playoffs and won a playoff game. Should have arguably beaten San Fran. Didn't come back the next year, this past year, and end on a 3-game losing streak and get in the playoffs, but do not win a playoff game. I think having anything but beyond, or not, I guess not up to winning at least 1 playoff game, would absolutely be some level of disappointing for me. To me, at least minimum top 10 offense, top 10 defense, and top 16 special teams. Like there's no reason that this offense can't be in the top 10. There's no reason that this defense can't be in the top 10. And to me, it is time for the special teams to be in the front half of the league. I'm not asking for number 1. I'm just asking for number 16. And if it's anything above that, great. But I need to see a special teams that is competent this year. I need to see progression rather than regression. I thought in 2024, we saw way too much stagnation and even a little bit of regression as well. And too much regression, quite frankly. And this is supposed to be a draft and develop team. I want to see progression this up and coming year. I need to see a more aggressive Matt LaFleur. And I need to see, I really believe that we can see a top 10 season from Jordan Love, and more specifically, just getting some true clarity on exactly who he is as a quarterback. So those are a handful of the ones that I discussed. Again, Saturday, you can get all 12 of the expectations that I have for the season, but those are some of the ones that I think are worth noting.
I'm going to deliberately end early, and maybe I'll hit a couple questions. We got a bunch in the comments I want to hit, but one of my co-hosts has a good one. My dad's got a couple, but I love what you said about Jordan Love, if he's the guy. But it wasn't just Jordan Love. We were such an odd team last season where we're so stocked on talent in certain positions on the roster. But then one of my favorite things that I believe was you and Warren Sharp talked about, was we struggled on 4th down, not only with like when to go for it, but with the play calling. And I think LaFleur is a heck of a coach. He gets the most out of a lot of his players, but there was some questionable play calling that happened last season. And the other thing that you talked about recently is we were this close to being 0-6 in the division. We were 1-5 last year. So I agree with you. I'm expecting a top 10 offense. The top 10, if we can get a top 10 defense, we're going to have a heck of a team. We start week 1 in Detroit. Do you think we can finally beat Detroit in Lambeau? I also listened to that on your show today. I think the last time we won was 21 or 20. It's been
21.
21. Can we win for the first time in Lambeau against Detroit in 4 years? Do you think it's a changing of the guard in the division?
They absolutely can. Whether they will is what's going to make that first game really enticing and really exciting. They'll get a win against Detroit this year, whether it's in Green Bay or it's Thanksgiving, right? The other one, do they play Thanksgiving? I can't remember.
Checking. November 27th, I think it is. Yeah. I think we do play on Thanksgiving. Yeah.
So they'll get one of those wins, I think, I don't think they're going to go 0-2 against Detroit again this year. Hopefully they can just start off on the right foot and get that win right away. I'm really, really interested to see how Green Bay manages the preseason and training camp to get ready, because they were, again, 1-5 against the division this past year. They were 0-6 against good teams, including 0-2 against Detroit. And now you've got Detroit coming to Lambeau. And really, in the first 5 days of their season, they've got Detroit at home and Washington at home. And you can't start 0-2. Like, it's just it would be an absolute nightmare scenario. 1-1 is fine. They can bounce back from 1-1. I'm not concerned about that. But in a division that's going to be exceedingly difficult, in a conference that has Philly, Detroit, amongst others, even that first loss against Detroit is going to have ramifications in the division. And as you really would ideally like to be the number 1 seed in the NFC and get that bye, there's only one team that gets that bye now. And again, in a division that's really tough, a win or loss against Detroit in this game could absolutely swing the division one way or the other, whether you're, again, maybe the 1, 2, or 3 seed, or whether you're the 5, 6, or 7 seed in the NFC, which again is a massive connotation, because it's, either you're going to maybe get a home game or 2 on your way to the playoffs, or you're going to get all road games. So this is a massively important game. Side note, I hate division games early in the season. In the first 2 weeks, I think all of these should be week 1, week 2 interconference games, meaning you should be playing NFC, AFC the first 2 weeks, because those are the games that matter the least. And teams are just really ramping up at that point in time. But guess what? It's not the way that it is. It's not that way for Detroit. It's not that way for Green Bay. And they've got one of the more enticing, difficult, challenging, and important games of their entire schedule right away in week 1. So can they? Yes. Will they? That's what's going to make it fun.
I agree. And it's pretty fun that we start with Detroit and then Washington too. If you consider Washington, they look like an up and coming contender. And if we're going to hang with these teams, like you said, one loss early on could make a difference. And last season, we were one of those teams that we beat up on the bad teams. And like you said, we were 0-6 against Philadelphia and the teams in our division. I'm going to hit a couple. I've got a lot of questions, but I've got some good ones in here. Jason, I don't know if he pops up on your show or not. He's been on mine. This is for you. What are your expectations for Matthew Golden, and do you think he will win Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, I do not think he will win Rookie of the Year. That's probably the easier one. And I will preface that by saying there are a billion mouths to feed in this offense. It's going to be very, very difficult for, I think, any of these weapons outside of maybe Jacobs and maybe a little bit of Tucker Kraft. Jacobs would probably be the only one that could get any real accolades. To me, you're going to have Wicks, Reed, Dobbs, Golden at minimum fighting for, snaps and just, targets and those sort of things. Not to mention Christian Watson's going to come back at some point. Kraft is going to be massively involved in the offense. Musgrave's going to have a bigger role this year than he did last year. Josh Jacobs isn't going anywhere. He is going to have, again, probably the single biggest role in the offense. Marshawn Lloyd is back and healthy. So, if I'm a fantasy player, I'm staying away from anyone probably not named Josh Jacobs, maybe Tucker Kraft on this team. And I think, again, any of those individual accolades are going to be very difficult because there's just so many targets to go around when there's a lot of players that are going to demand those. So I will say no on that. But expectations is that he can come in and help this team from game 1 against Detroit. Like, this is a very talented wide receiver, plucks the ball to the air, changes the speeds within his route. He's very fast, obviously, run after the catch ability. He knows how to get open. And I think if you get the ball in his hands, he can make things happen. So I absolutely believe that he can be somebody that you can get the ball to very early on in his career, and that he's going to be able to make things happen. I think it's going to be up to Matthew Golden to make sure that he understands the entirety of the offense, knows the checks, knows the audibles, knows everything that he needs to know, and is doing a really good job of blocking on the outside, because we know how much that matters to Matt. And if you're not blocking on the outside, it's going to be very difficult to get on the field. So I'm very confident that Matthew's going to be able to make an impact sooner rather than later. But I think any sort of accolades will probably be tough for him just based on the depth chart and where things are at.
Good answer. And I'm hoping Savion maybe carves out a role as well. I was really intrigued when we drafted him.
Sure.
He looks like he might take over some of those gadget plays that Jaden Reed did. That's my hope for him. And maybe he can just help give us an explosive play. And I loved what you said about Golden. Like, I didn't see, I know he was like 4.29 or 4.28. I didn't see that on tape, but what I did see was a guy consistently getting separation, getting open, which is,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. You're good.
I was just gonna say, go back and watch the Houston tape, because at Texas, I wrote it down before it was before I saw anyone else write it.
Mhm.
And every single person that basically watched, like after I went by and like started actually looking at what other people were saying after I put my own scouting report together, it was to a T. Like every single one, like doesn't really play like the 4-2-9, doesn't play to the 4-2-9, doesn't play to the 4-2-9, and I had the same thing. And then after they drafted him, I went back and I watched the Houston tape. I'm like,
Okay.
oh, there it is. Like
You saw it.
I
Okay.
very much you see it very quickly. It almost looks like and feels like a different player. Like they use him in a different way, and you see
Okay.
some of the run after the catch and just him looking like a little dart around the field. It's really really fun. So that like the two tape watch and tape studies that I did this offseason that I enjoyed the most was Matthew Golden, Houston, which is really really fun, and you see some of the stuff that that showed up in the testing. You see it at Houston, and then Savion Williams earlier in his career at TCU as well, where they actually used him much more as a true wide receiver rather than a kind of more the gadget wildcat guy this past year. And that stuff's really really fun as well. So in Green Bay, by the way, is well known, whether it's Jordan Love, Dontavian Wicks, there's so many of them. They have made a little bit of a living in saying, we're going to go back and look at, or not everyone, of course, looks at it, but we're going to put a lot more stock into maybe not this last year, but the year prior to that. And they find a lot of diamonds in the rough because a lot of teams, and obviously not with Golden, because Golden had his breakout at Texas, but with like a Savion Williams is a great example where you look at Savion Williams, and I think he had a little bit of a disappointing year for some people, just obviously used in that gadget role in TCU. I mean, you go back and watch him in the year before and even the year before that, and the stuff that he was doing as a true wide receiver. And there was some really, really special stuff out there. Wicks was a player who had a really tough last year in college, and the year before that had completely torn it up. Like they have found a lot of value by putting more value in the year before rather than maybe the down year that they had in their final season. And that's been something that's actually served them quite well. Hopefully it will again with Savion Williams.
I am hoping that he can carve out a role because I see explosive play potential, like especially if Christian Watson can't come back healthy, or if we decide not to resign him after this season or next. I think we'll have him for one more year, but Savion, I think, could carve out an interesting role. Let's stick on the receivers for a second, because you've said some stuff about Wicks, which I want to hit. But do you think the Packers did enough at the receiver position to, I know Philly was able to lean on their run game, but they still had AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and the Chiefs were kind of the anomaly. Their receiving core wasn't really banged up last year. Do you think we have enough there to make a deep playoff run, or do you think we'd have to go extremely run heavy to be able to accomplish the goal that me and you are both hoping they do, where they win at least one playoff game?
Yeah, so I will start by saying I'd be remiss by not bringing up the fact that a year ago at this time, I was so insanely bullish on the Packers wide receivers and really thought wholeheartedly that they basically found a cheat code. I'm like, these guys combined as a group are making $6 million. And you've got Watson, Reed, Wicks, Dobbs. These guys have already shown in 2023 they can play. Melton had a really nice end of 2023. Malik Heath even looked like he was going to be able to be a player for them. And in a real way, they basically went 0 for 6 on development in 2024. And not only that, Wicks took a step back. Reed took a big step back in the second half of the year. Dobbs had the suspension, 2 concussion issues. Watson gets the torn MCL and the ACL at the end of the year. Melton and Heath don't really take any sort of jump whatsoever. And the entire group ends up being not only where they were, but worse than what they were in 2023 by a pretty solid margin. So I went into that year being like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like every other team is envious of the Green Bay Packers because they've got this really deep, talented, and young wide receiver core that's going to go tear up the league, and they're making $6 million combined. And I truly felt that way going in. And then again, it was not the season that they wanted. What I will say that gives me so much confidence, even again this year, and I'm trying again to make sure that I don't make the same mistake twice. What I really love about this, especially once Watson comes back, is they have every flavor and ingredient type of wide receiver that you could possibly want. You need a big, tall guy to run down the field. All right, you got Christian Watson. You need a possession receiver. All right, you got Romeo Dobbs. You need a slot guy that can get anywhere he wants. All right, you got Jaden Reed. You want a route runner separator. You've got Dontavian Wicks. You want a first-round pick, uber talented, wide receiver that can do a little bit of everything. All right, you got Matthew Golden. You want a gadget guy that you can put in the backfield, run as a wildcat, and also has some of the other unique traits that even like a Christian Watson has. All right, we'll give you a Savion Williams. You want another gadget guy with 4.240 speed. All right, we've got a McCole Hardman. That doesn't even include Bo Melton, Malik Heath, etc. So to me, not only that, but the tall, big receiver type in Luke Musgrave, the overall tight end in Tucker Kraft, who continues to get better and better, guys out of the backfield like Lloyd and Jacobs, and just as runners in Lloyd and Jacobs that can run the ball as well. To me, you have every ingredient. You have every, whatever Matt LaFleur needs to run any specific play, whatever piece that he needs or group of pieces that he needs, he can look on the sidelines like, oh, I have anything that I need to go and make this play work. And then it's up to his guys to go out and execute. Now, if guys don't catch the ball and, there's all that receiver error that we saw from this past year that carries over into 2025, then they don't have the wide receivers that they need. I think all the talent is there. I think every ingredient that they need is there, but it's just paramount that these guys actually go out and execute and do their 111th. Otherwise, it all is for naught. And then we are going to be looking back at it at the end of 2025 and being like, all right, we're going to have to sort of revamp this receiver room because those guys continue to not be able to take that step. And hopefully that's just not the case.
Well, I mean, and that was one of the problems with Love that people don't remember. And I want to pivot to Love because I know we've only got about 10, 15 more minutes. But one of the reasons Jordan Love struggled last year was he got hurt the first game, was on the injury report. What was it? 8 of the first 9 weeks. Remind me, it was a couple days ago. I listened to that one. It was most of the first half of the season. He missed multiple games. He was continuously injured. But then, and I saw some regression from him as well that I'm hoping just being healthy and continuity, like I'm hoping the receivers can step up around him. Dontavian Wicks is one of the best receivers at the NFL at getting open he's not the fastest guy in the world, but he's great at getting open, but then continue drops from him. And Jaden Reed was the other one that was disappointing last year. Romeo Doubs was banged up. Watson was injured on and off last season. So that's hurting Jordan Love's development, that these guys can't stay in the field or have drops. But I'm going to pivot to a question now. I loved what you said where you're expecting Jordan Love, one of your expectations. I think it was either today's or yesterday's episode. I listened to it today. I can't remember which one it was. You were saying you're expecting more interceptions from Love in training camp. But then you're expecting him to go and throw 2 in the first half of the season. What are you just hoping to see from Jordan Love this season? It's a complex question. I'm hoping less giveaways. But what are you hoping to see from Jordan Love himself this season?
Yeah, so I think last year, and clearly the injuries played a part. And when I say the injuries played a part, not only did the injuries physically play a part on the field, some of the lack of mobility early in the year limited some of the play calls and the play design that Matt LaFleur wanted to run. But more importantly, the injuries also extremely limited his playing time all throughout the course of the year. And I think just the lack of timing and rhythm and consistency with his wide receivers was affected in a huge way because he wasn't out there practicing more often. So I think all of that definitely plays a part in, why we didn't maybe see the exact Jordan Love that we were expecting this past year. But I also think we saw there was I don't want to call it necessarily like a crisis of faith, but what I would say is that in the first half of the year, we saw him be aggressive, which I think is the best version of Jordan Love, quite frankly, is the aggressive, willing to let it rip, get it down the field and take some shots. But he ended up with quite a few interceptions in that situation. And you could tell the Lions game when they lost and he threw the pick 6 after the game for Jordan, as steady as he always is, just no ups, no downs, no highs, no lows. It's just consistently the same guy every single time. That was the first time I ever saw it where you could tell it really affected him of I'm beating this team because I'm making bad decisions. And you could tell he really took that to heart. And then the second half of the year, once they came back from the bye, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he threw 2 interceptions the rest of the season, somewhere right around there.
It was low. It was low.
It was extremely low. Yeah. However, it sort of neutered some of his ability to take those chances down the field, some of the big plays, and you didn't see that same just confidence of let me hit my drop, let it rip down the field and make some big plays. So my expectation for Jordan this year is you've got to find a way to take those two minds and combine the best version of each of them into one player. And I really thought that we did see that for a good chunk of the end of 2023. And I think the lack of rhythm, consistency, timing, and everything this past year played a part in that. But I know wholeheartedly this dude knows the offense in and outs, the checks, the audibles, where to go with the ball. He's getting to the point of, I wouldn't maybe say like quite the PhD yet, but he's in his masters he's maybe even beyond his masters of this offense. Like he's got it. You could see it in OTAs and mini camps as well. Like that stuff's all there. I have no concern about that. Now it's, can you navigate everything that the defense is throwing at you and figure out those times of like, hey, I need to be cautious in this moment. I need to play it a little bit more safe. Checkdowns are fine. First and second downs early in the game. I don't need to put on the Superman cape in some of those situations, but also knowing that when the play call or play design calls for it, or when the down and distance or the score call for it, like, hey, I might need to go a little bit nuclear here. I might need to put the Superman cape on and go make some things happen. And if a ball gets picked off, so be it. Like I'm going to go down swinging. I'm going to go down punching. I'm going to give him my best shot. So I think that I just want to see that all come together and understanding the right time for the right reasons that he's making those decisions. And if you get the Jordan that is not afraid to rip it down the field and playing with that level of confidence and hitting those big throws, but also understanding the time and the place and making sure that he's doing an overall better job of taking care of the football, it's game over. He's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So that's, I think, to me, the last and final step in that evolution for Jordan Love.
I'm hoping that's his ceiling because I've seen glimpses. He's been so wildly up and down where there's been moments I'm seeing shades of Brett Favre and even Aaron Rodgers with this decision making. Sometimes the pinpoint accuracy reminds me of Rodgers, but his arm strength and the way he plays is a little bit more like Favre, which I'm fine with. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm just hoping to see. It's some of it's going to have to come from the receivers too, and honestly,
for sure.
Some of it's going to have to come from LaFleur. Like it almost felt like he put because he was injured, because Love has mobility that people forget about because it was so hampered for half of last season. The dude can move. One of the reasons the offense worked better when Malik Willis was in is because he's a mobile quarterback, and that caters more to LaFleur's offense. So I feel like LaFleur had to go put the training wheels back on him that he had in 23 in his first season. You had to see those back on to a degree because of the injury. And I'm hoping part of it's from LaFleur as well. I'm hoping to see him take those off a bit and still utilize Josh Jacobs, but I don't think we have to be as run heavy as we were last season. I got a couple I want to hit. We've only got a few more minutes. Dang, I really want to ask. Okay, I'm going to pivot off Jordan Love. Yeah, I'm going to pivot off Jordan Love. You made a post about this and you talked about it in the show. Did we do enough on the defensive line in the offseason? The pass rush is one of my biggest concerns on this roster. Like, It's not like you have to have a number one pass rusher, but it was frustrating because against Philly and Detroit, and even again for the most part against Minnesota, how many sacks do we have in those games?
It was like two in each. It was right around there. It wasn't many.
Yeah, it was not a lot. It was highly disappointing. Do you think we did enough to address the defensive line and the pass rush in the offseason, or is that a concern of yours?
Yeah, I think ultimately the answer is probably not, but I'm willing to give some benefit of the doubt. And I do think it is tough when you invest. I mean, look around the league and see anyone else who has 4 first-round picks to go on their front four, right? You've got Rashawn Gary, LVN, Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt. It's not like they haven't tried, and really 3 of those now in Clark, Gary have long-term extensions with big deals, and Devontae Wyatt just got his 5th-year option picked up. So you're not only giving money, but you're draft value, but you're giving monetary value to that front four as well. So there is a point in time where you're like, all right, we've invested the resources. We have to get everything out of those resources to make this work. And I think that's why they go and get DeMarcus Covington, change the defensive line coaches, because they're hoping that a new voice, a new, tactician, a new skill coach is going to be able to get all the things that they expect out of that front four, because it's easier to do that than it is to revamp your front four when you've got that much resources already invested in the position. So I think if you're looking for reasons for optimism, new defensive line coach, the fact that we now know that LVN had a pretty significant, hand or finger injury this past year that really limited his ability to play with his hands the way that he would want. So you're hoping that really affected him. Kenny Clark had a pretty significant foot injury that very much hampered his ability to play. And you could, you in hindsight, you can really see like that was Kenny's never played at that. And he was fine. He was good. He was okay. Wasn't bad, but Kenny's never been at that level. Kenny's always been really good, so I think you can argue,
especially in 23. What did he have? 7-9 sacks. He was a Pro Bowler. He was just, his productivity was way above 24.
So I think you can look at that and say, we're not necessarily asking any of these guys to maybe be something that they haven't been in the past. We just need to kind of get that out of them, other than maybe an LVN. What I'll also say is this, so last year, Rashawn Gary had 49 pressures.
Mm-hmm.
In 2021, and we're not talking about like a 45-year-old Rashawn Gary here. Like, he's still in the prime of his career. In 2020, right? What's that?
Was it 81 in 2023?
He had 87 in 2021. In 2021, he had 87 pressures. So 38 more. Imagine just getting 38 more pressures out of Rashawn Gary. With Kenny Clark, just pulling it up right now, last year, he had 34 pressures. All right, just the year before. It's not even the highest of his career. He had 36. Imagine getting 32, and he had 10 sacks per PFF, 9 more than he had just with one last year per PFF. Imagine getting 32 more pressures and 9 more sacks out of Kenny Clark. How about Devontae Wyatt? Imagine Devontae Wyatt goes back to where he was in 2023. He had 48 pressures in 2023, only 32 a season ago. Now it's an extra pressure per game from Devontae Wyatt. That's not even including like a small jump from LVN. If you just get those versions, and again, Gary's not going to be in the 80s, but imagine he's in, the high 60s, like somewhere in the middle of that. You're getting an extra, pressure at least per game from Gary, an extra pressure at least per game from Kenny Clark, an extra pressure per game from Devontae Wyatt. And you're hoping, I think, that LVN can go from in the 20s, where I think he was at 20 last year. If he can go to like 36, which is not even a dominant pass rusher by any means, like that's an extra pressure per game. So now imagine just from those 4 alone, you're adding 4 pressures every single game to your total. I think there is some room for opportunity there. You go and get a Baron Sorrell, you get a Colin Oliver, a Warren Brinson. Let's see what these guys can do, if they can bring anything to the table. My ultimate reaction would be no. I don't think they did quite enough. And I think in order to be a Super Bowl team, you need to be a really good pass rushing team with your front 4, not just with smoke and mirrors, not with blitzes, but when everyone knows exactly what's going to happen, and you need to cover with 7 against the Mahomeses and the Josh Allens and the, whoever, great quarterbacks of the world in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl. You need to be able to cover with 7, get there with 4. There's no smoke and mirrors. And that's where Gary, LVN, Wyatt, and Clark just have to be much better than they were this past season. So if they can, you're in a great spot. If they can't, I think it's going to be a heavy lift, and it's probably going to need to be the offense and special teams that does a little bit more of that heavy lifting.
I agree. I'm going to hit a couple comments really quick. Justin, I appreciate it. We're hoping he does come back live. Thank you. It's been 3 months off for me. This was a really fun first show. This is a joke one. This is my Bears co-host, McCole Hartman.
Love it.
Because the Packers, I was hoping that they would go back and re-sign Davante Adams, which I actually, even at his age, I would have liked it personally. I wanted us to bring a veteran in the room. Really, right now, that's McCole Hardman. I was a little disappointed we didn't do a lot at receiver, but then we went out and drafted Matthew Golden, and I've watched I have not watched Houston, but I've watched a lot of tape on him since the draft because I do Dynasty as well, and really see a guy that I think could develop into a special player for us. I'm hoping that's the case. We both know it's the first receiver we drafted since 2002, so It was a big deal. My co-host on my other show asked a great one. He knows. Let me find it. Here we go. Is Matt LaFleur the man that can steer your team ship to the promised land and bring the Lombardi back to Titletown? I think that's a 2-parter. Can LaFleur and Love, because unfortunately, quarterback and coach are the 2 most important spots on your roster. Do you foresee that happening?
Whether it happens or not. Yeah, that's $1 million question, right? I absolutely believe that the trio of Goody, LaFleur, and Jordan Love have the ability to be standing at that podium together, passing the Lombardi trophy between each other. And I do think at some point that will happen. I think in order for that to happen, and it really goes back to what Brian Gutekunst kicked off the offseason with, is by saying we have the young team, they're up and coming together, they've developed together. It's now time for urgency, and it's time to start bringing championships back to Green Bay. I think he knows it. I think he feels it. I think he understands the talent that is on this team. But in order for that to happen, in order for that jump to take place, you need some of these players to go from good to great. And I think whether that's Jordan Love, whether that's Edgerrin Cooper, whether that is Zach Tom even taking another step, whether that is Evan Williams becoming a Pro Bowl caliber safety, whether that's LVN or Devontae Wyatt living up to expectations as first round picks, whoever that is, whatever that looks like, whether it's Matthew Golden just being an absolute stud at wide receiver, I don't really care who or how, but they're going to need a handful of these guys to take that next step. You go back to 2010, right? You're talking about Aaron Rodgers, that unbelievable wide receiver core, some unbelievable offensive linemen, but on that defense, Cullen Jenkins was playing out of his mind. Clay Matthews was obviously unbelievable. Charles Woodson was unbelievable. Nick Collins, Tramon Williams, even, Sam Shields was playing great. So that was a team that had a ton of studs. You go back to 96, that's Reggie White and Sean Jones and Santana Dotson, Gilbert Brown, just on the defensive line alone, Eugene Robinson and Leroy Butler at safety, Craig Newsome at corner. You're going Brett Favre at quarterback. And I'm going to miss like probably 20 more guys that I should say off the top of my mind.
Dorsey Levens, Mark
exactly.
Shimura.
Oh my gosh.
Robert Brooks at receiver.
Oh, that studs, so much right? Fun. So
and Desmond Howard, you had the
Desmond Howard as a returner, so if you want to be that Super Bowl team, you need stars, you need studs. And to me, they've got a lot of really good players on this team. Really good gets you to the first round of the playoffs, and either winning one or losing one, you need great players. And to me, that's the next step for this team.
And I see some potential. You see guys like, I have one more, if I got a couple more minutes, and then I want you to shout out your show again. But I mean, I see it with Xavier McKinney played great last year. He's one of the best safeties in football. If you can have Evan Williams or Javon Bullard, although I kind of like him as a coverage safety more, but if you can have one of those other guys step up, you're set at safety. I'm a little bit concerned at corner, but Nixon has been playing out of his mind. Like you said, we just need a few more guys, and then we're getting close to the Phillies, the Detroits, and maybe the Washingtons of the world in the NFC. I agree with you. This is one I haven't asked yet. I've got one last one for you. What is, you kind of said it on your shows, what is the one player you're looking to make, trying to think of how I want to phrase it, to make the most growth, or to be the unsung hero or standout of the team? Like last year, like in fantasy, like Bucky Irving stood out, but like for Tampa Bay, but for the Packers, Evan Williams played great in a real way. Edgerrin Cooper, I think, even exceeded both of our expectations, the way he played and the way Hafley used him. He looks like, you've said it, maybe he could become the best linebacker in football. Who's a player, offensive, defense, special teams, do you think that's going to really blow people away this season?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying I think the two players that can easily take the biggest jump and become real stars in this league are Edge Cooper and Tucker Kraft. To me, they're on that trajectory to become, like, if you're saying like somebody reaches, a high-end Pro Bowl / maybe even all pro level at a position that hasn't, or just as a player that hasn't done that yet, to me, Tucker Kraft and Edgerrin Cooper are the very first two that would probably come out of my mouth. If you're looking for like something a little bit more like unsung, or a player that maybe can elevate this team to a next level, one of the players that I do still have a lot of belief, I'll give one on each side. I'll give one easily in Dontavian Wicks, just kind of what we talked about before. Nobody's going to be surprised by that because I'm never selling my stock. But on the defensive side is Carrington Valentine. I think he has the ability to be a really good corner. And I think what people don't see a lot that we see in training camp, OTAs, mini camps a ton, he has confidence for days and he has unbelievable instincts. And I do feel like on actual game days, I think sometimes he gets a little bit trigger shy of like, I don't want to like read something and then get beat on a double move or something. And I think he's almost like hesitant to go and be that guy. I think if there is a situation where the game starts slowing down for him and he just starts trusting those instincts, Like you're going to see some pick sixes. You're going to see some big time interceptions. Like he has that playmaking ability, and he's pretty darn good as a cover corner this past year. I know that the recency bias will just have us remember that Dallas Goedert play. He does need to play a little bit more physical, better against the run, and just a better tackler. I'll absolutely say that. But he is a really good cover corner that I think is still just coming into his own. I think he's still 23 years old for now. He is 23. He turns, I believe, 24 in September. 24 September 9th. So there are corners that were drafted in this draft that are older than Carrington Valentine, and he's going into year 3. The sky's the limit still for him, and I think he could be somebody that we look at it at the end of the year and be like, wow, he really came into his own.
Also, I mean, it's listed on our depth chart. I was hoping that Valentine could hold on that spot because everything I read about Nate Hobbs in the advanced stats and all the tape you watch on him, he looks like he'd be better as our nickel corner. Do you foresee that happening where Valentine's on one side, Nixon's on the other, and Hobbs is playing nickel? Do you think that that's the best scenario, like depth chart for our defense? I didn't mean to ask more. I just had another one.
No, you're good. You're good. So I think what I expect to happen is that they're going to have 2 nickel defenses. I think they're going to have sort of a base nickel defense or a big nickel defense against more 12 personnel and maybe on more run type downs, where you're going to have Bullard in the slot. And then I think you're going to have Nixon and Hobbs on the outside in those situations. But I think your primary nickel, the one that's on the field in more obvious passing situations and gets you a little bit more coverage on the board, is going to have Hobbs in the slot with Valentine and Nixon on the outside. So I think you're going to see 2 of them. I think both of them make sense given the scenario that you might be in. And I think they'll utilize both. You're really all 4 of those guys, meaning Nixon, Hobbs, Bullard, and Valentine, with Bullard and Valentine probably being the 2 that are platooning, and Hobbs and Nixon being the guys that stay out on the field a little bit more.
I like that. That's a good answer too. Thank you. Okay. It can be a really quick, easy one.
Sure.
Who's your favorite Packers player ever? My it's Vince Lombardi, and I love your background. I've been looking at the picture a bunch behind it. Who's your favorite Packers player ever? Is it someone from before your time, or is it someone current?
Yeah. So, I have an affinity for defensive backs. Apparently this is not planned. I don't have like a defensive back thing. I don't know why, but all 4 that like immediately come to mind are defensive backs. And probably my number 1 is Tramon Williams. They're all on that 2010 team, by the way. But number 1 is probably Tramon Williams. Charles Woodson is still, like, what he did in Green Bay was probably one of my favorite players to ever watch. Nick Collins, absolutely love Nick Collins, and Sam Shields. Like, I love those 4 players. I love them dearly. I love everything about them. I thought it was the most fun secondary that I've seen put together. And so, yeah, those are the 4. I would probably go again. Williams and Woodson are the 2 that always immediately come to mind for me, but I always have to shout out Collins and Shields as well.
Collins was so much fun. And Reggie White in the 90s, I remember what he did in that Super Bowl. The guy was ridiculous. I like our formula of trying to get an all-pro defensive player to try to lift us over the top. I like Goot's attempt here, and I'm hoping that it works. I've got a lot of questions, but I promised you 30 to 35 minutes. Thank you for your time, Andy. Do you want to, I know you've already shouted out your show. Do you want to, anything else you want to say about Pack-A-Day, any big upcoming guests, anything at all? The floor is yours.
Yeah, just follow us, Pack-A-Day Podcast, wherever you get your favorite podcasts, over on YouTube as well. You can find me at Andy Herman NFL. And yeah, just really excited for training camp coming up next week. Obviously, I'm going to be doing a ton of live shows, immediate reactions. It is the time of year that we probably put out the absolute most content. And of course, follow along on Twitter as well, as I'll be getting you guys everything that I see out at training camp. So yeah, that's what's coming up soon, which is very exciting.
Awesome. My people, I'm going to be having a live Dynasty draft next week. Brady Augustine will be coming back on for Packer Nation. Really excited in September, but I'll be back with live shows once a week pretty quick here. So Andy, thank you for your time. It was awesome meeting you. I hope you can come back on again. And everyone in the comments, I appreciate it. My dad was watching. I had a lot of other people, but thank you. And I got to end it with Go Pack Go. And I will see you guys again in a little over a week.
Go Pack Go.